Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Innovation Root Studio. I'm your host, Noopur, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Arjun Malhotra. Hello, Mr. Malhotra.
I know.
So, let me tell you very briefly about Mr. Arjun Malhotra. He's an Indian entrepreneur, industrialist, and philanthropist. He has co founded HCL Group in 1975, where he served as a vice chairman. He has also founded TechSpan and served as a chief executive officer of US-based firm Headstrong after the two companies merged. Really happy to have you with us, sir, and looking forward to the discussion.
My pleasure.
My absolute pleasure of mine, sir, to have you. And to begin with, you were born in a family of an army man and a doctor mother. How did you become an industrialist, and what was the inspiration behind?
Well, so my father's family is all from the forces. All five brothers, his brothers were in the army. And my mother's family really is scientists and teachers. My maternal grandfather was a scientist. I had no intention of ever getting into business. The whole idea was to finish my BTech at IIT Kharagpur, go to the US, do my PhD, and work for NASA. That was the plan. Just that I attribute my, uh, it's education. First thing you got to, I think I got to the right institutes both for school and college where I got the right kind of motivation. I think the second thing after education was, just technology. Because I decided to get into electronics, and that's a whole story by itself. Why the technology is so rapidly changing that it sort of sucks you in. It's like a nasha, as they say. Uh, Once you get into the technology, you have to keep updated with it. And I think the third thing is circumstances. In fact, what happened in my case was I decided to stay back in India, and I worked with DCM as a senior management trainee. I joined them as a senior management trainee, and they decided to get into electronics. And I was one of the few electronics engineers in the company. So I got disproportionate responsibility 1 year out of college. I was told to look after national sales. So, 1 year out of college, you don't get that kind of, you didn't, at least in those days, get that kind of responsibility. I'm going back to 1970 right now. And, I worked with DCM 5 years. And then because of the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act in India, DCM being a large company could not move from calculators and programmable calculators to computers. And microprocessors were just coming out. And a number of us believed that microprocessors were really going to change the world, which they have done actually. And so we decided to step out. We didn't have a business plan, we didn't have money, but we had a conviction that this technology was going to make a major difference, do a major shift. So six of us stepped out of DCM and started then known as Hindustan Computers Limited, which is now known as HCL. That's how it started. Had no, my parents were supportive, but I think the rest of the family thought I was crazy. No one had done business, so to say, in the family. It's funny how 2 years later, when the company starts doing well, everyone wants to take the credit for telling you to do it, kind of thing. But yeah, that's basically how it happened. My grandmother was very supportive. My wife was supportive, and so just decided, I was just convinced that the technology was going to make a difference, and so that's how we went.
That's great to know, sir, the conviction you had in yourself and what technology can do, I think, and really admirable. And we look after to that kind of inspiration from you. And sir, what was the biggest challenge you faced in your journey so far as an entrepreneur? Because you have a long journey starting with founding HCL in 1975.
So the biggest problem was initially, obviously, we didn't have the money. Uh, so we started with 1,75,000 rupees, which is what all of us could pull in at that time with our savings and everything. And you had to be in Bombay. Bombay was the big market. 60% of India's economy or whatever came from Bombay. And Bombay, you couldn't rent an office. Unfortunately, the laws were such. So out of that, 1,25,000 went to buy an office in Bombay. And so really the working capital for the company was just 50,000 rupees. And so, and as you are aware, HCL was bootstrapped till it went public. And so for the first few years, our basic focus was on cash flow. You know, we, in fact, when you did a sales review, you first reviewed your receivables, then you went to your prospects. That's how life was. And in fact, 10 years after we started, the company was doing quite well. We had 2,000 people all over the country. We decided to get together to celebrate it in Udaipur. And while we were there, we sort of looked at history. And it was funny, India in those days, the 1,25,000 we invested in real estate in Bombay gave us a better return than the 50,000 we had put into the company. From a return point of view to the shareholders, so to say, to the investors. But things have obviously changed. So the biggest challenge was living with that cash flow pressure for many, many years, which fortunately entrepreneurs don't have today, or most of them don't have, because you've got VC money, you've got all that support available, which wasn't available.
It's amazing what you have managed to achieve with all those challenges, sir. What values and principles in your journey led to your success?
So I think, yeah, from a value point of view, I think you've got to look at how do I put this? When you're selling computers, you have to do a little bit of, at least in those days, you had to do a bit of education as to what computers could do. Most people were using computers to do clerical work, ledger posting, inventory ledgers, stuff like that. Really, with microprocessors and the ability to program, we could actually get some decision support kind of tools that they could use computers for. The second problem was middle management felt very threatened by computers. And there was a lot of hue and cry about how computers would replace labor and all that stuff. So you had to face all those issues when we went out. I think ultimately the values I think that helped me specifically were I, I stayed with the facts. I was upfront with most of my prospects and customers. If they wanted something done in 2 weeks and we couldn't do it in 6 weeks, at the earliest, I would tell them upfront that, hey, if it's that urgent, I can't do it. I can give it to you in 6 weeks. I can't do it in 2 weeks. And yeah, and some of my salespeople used to get upset because we lost some orders because of that. But the customer would always come back to us. So I think the important thing that I consider is recruit very smart people. In fact, I tell people, try and find people who are smarter than you, and then enable them. I would have customers come to me after they placed a big order or they were negotiating a big order. And they'd come to me and we talk about various things, support, how we want, all that delivery, all that stuff. And then the guy would ask me for a price, and I would give him a price. And he'd say, but your salesman in Bombay or in Delhi or wherever gave me a better price. I said, yes. If I give a lower price than my salesman, then every customer will come to me. I can't afford that. So I enable them to give you the best price the company can give. And when you come to me, you come to me because you want to make sure that you get the right support, that I'm aware of the order, and I'm aware of what the commitments are so that we don't overcommit and stuff like that. And so I can take care of that. But I can't give you a better price than my salesman because he's the one who's authorized to give you the best deal. And and the salesman would be sitting there and he would feel, he would feel very good. And they became, as I put it, protectors of the bottom line of the company because they felt responsible for doing that. And I think that's a culture we were able to get in HCL that people talk about even today. And you go to the market and people used to say, if I can recruit a salesman from HCL, then I think my sales team will work right. But that was basically what we did. The whole idea was if I get smart people, I have to enable them. Yes, people make mistakes. You can call them up and tell them how and what mistake they made and support them. What you don't want them to do is make the same mistake again. And so that's how we did it back in the days in HCL.
Absolutely, sir. You mentioned about hiring people who are smarter than you. How difficult it is today than earlier, according to your experience, hiring the right kind of a talent or maybe the smarter people? Do you think it is because a lot has changed, the kind of technologies, the kind of opportunities, the kind of marketplace we are in right now? What's your view?
Yes, no, absolutely right. When we were fortunate, when we went out, there weren't too many jobs available in India, and most of the jobs were with established companies like Hindustan Levers or Larsen and Toubro and places like that, right? IT was, parents would not recommend their children in those days to go to an IT. They wanted them to go to a more stable kind of industry. IT was emerging, computers and stuff like that. So really the people we got were the risk takers, the individuals who are willing to take a risk, get into a new industry. So that was one good thing for us. Second is we could go to the IITs and the RECs, as they were called in those days, and the IIMs and recruit because those people were available. And if you gave them the right message and got them excited enough about the kind of environment they're going to be in and the kind of job they're going to do, they were willing to join. Obviously, you had to be competitive on salaries. And so, what we used to do was because we felt very clearly that unless we get the best people, we are not going to be able to grow in a new kind of business. All of us had at the senior level, we used to recruit out of 16 institutions in India. And I was responsible for four of them. And my job was that for all the graduates in that institute, HCL should be one of the top three jobs they would want to have. And so you had to go in and talk to them about the romance of computers and where it's going and how technology is moving and, just get them excited about the industry they were going to get into. And then talk a little bit about the company and the culture. Yeah, so we used to also, let's say, if I was recruiting from an IIT, I would have people who joined me a year or two earlier from the same IIT. We would send them back on campus for 3 or 4 days before we went for the interview. And they would go and they knew all those people. They'd stay in the hostel and talk to them about the company and what they were doing. And so my giving a presentation, there's a credibility issue. But one of their friends coming in and talking to them one on one, who they've lived with for 3, 4 years, is a completely different thing. And so we used to get a lot of, in fact, we were one of the jobs people wanted when we used to go out interview. And so we always were able to pick up the people we really liked from most of the colleges. That was, I mean, our competition was really no one in India. Our competition was people going overseas, uh, you know. So that was good, which is one reason why HCL grew, which is also one reason why if you look at the IT industry today, a lot of the CEOs and senior people are people who had worked in HCL, Wipro, one of these companies in the earlier days.
That's a great insight, sir. And since you have a very long journey as an entrepreneur, you have achieved a lot of things. Is there anything you regret not being able to achieve?
I have not been able to find the right work-life balance. I believe no one can find it. It's very difficult. I just haven't been able to. It's something I've been quote unquote struggling with most of my life. In fact, when my children were growing up, I had very little time. I was traveling 20 odd days a month. But now that I have grandchildren, I spend a little more time with them. Hopefully, my children tell me all the time that you never spent that kind of time. But that was how it was. But I still haven't been able to find that particular thing. So If you say, what do you struggle with most of your life? That's what I've struggled with. But I believe when I talk to a number of people, that nearly everyone is struggling with the same problem. Now, with COVID over the last few years and work from home, all of a sudden there's a different variable that's come into that equation to try and solve that problem. And a lot of people, that's one reason why companies are finding it difficult to get employees back to work, is because they've been able to find a much better, if not an ideal, work-life balance that they're able to do. And the challenge is now with us as managers to find a way of keeping our productivity up and keeping the motivation up and handling people who are remote from the office or come into office 1 day a week or even less than that, and see how we can, evaluate them, make them, get them to become part of the company culture. You're not used to it. You're used to people being in a physical location or multiple physical locations. So that's an interesting challenge that I think all of us are facing today. I mean, the words are hybrid, and you see a lot of stuff written on this nowadays. But yeah, and it's going to have a lot of other effects. So if you look at it, if more and more people work from home, you're going to need bigger homes or at least more room at home. And so all of a sudden, the housing industry is going to have to look at things a little differently. It's just a whole lot of things that for education is going to have a major impact. An IIT now doesn't have to be restricted by its physical location. If they put the act together, so to say, they can have 1 million kids working with them, or learning from them in the sense. So I would think the smaller colleges that don't have a reputation or aren't doing a great job should feel very threatened, because you can actually take away their students very easily at a much lower cost than what they're paying today and give them a better education. So yeah, there are lots of exciting things, lots of changes. To me, it's like lots of opportunities to do new things as we go forward in multiple industries.
Absolutely, sir. And the industries and academia is also adapting to these sort of changes. I see a lot of organizations making sure that employees have time flexibility and other things so that they can manage their household and work. So I think that's also appreciated by many organizations.
Mhm.
One important question with your experience, I would like to know, where do you see the Indian IT industry 5 years from now?
Oh, so I see it growing for sure. I mean, we've got a lot of smart people. I may not like the quality of training or the quality of education they get in a lot of educational institutions, but a lot of companies are doing upskilling people in the sense of taking few months to get them ready so that they become productive when they come in after that initial phase. In fact, it's very much like when you didn't have electricity, everyone had generators at home, small or large, that they put up. What the IT industry has done is like Infosys has a campus in Mysore. Everyone runs their own quote unquote finishing school to try and get these people ready for jobs. It's happening at some stage. They'll go back and say, why are we doing this? Why don't we just work with some of the universities, colleges near us and get them to get these people trained right so that they can come in with the degree that's really valid. That's one. I think the other thing is the industry is going to become more domain focused. Today, when you talk to someone in most of these IT services companies, they'll talk technology, they'll talk Java, they'll talk this, they'll talk, Windows or whatever, different technologies, .NET, whatever. I think it's going to change. I think we have to become more domain focused. So very much like an Accenture does today, you can see the big companies, the TCSs, the HCLs of the world are changing. There's some small companies that are niche that are working there. Headstrong is a good example, where we talk to the business guy and leverage technology to solve the business problem. So you're agnostic to technology. You don't say Java or C sharp or C++ or whatever. You look at the business problem and then use technology, whichever is the most relevant technology to solve that problem for the business user. That is going to come up. And that is where I think the industry is going to go over. Right. So it is going to be much more value added. Gone are the days where you did labor arbitrage and I'll give it to you at a lower cost. That lower cost, it's already gone away for senior people. When I look at some of my senior people in companies that I'm consulting with or on the board, whether they're sitting in India or the US, their salaries are about the same. Or their cost to company, let me put it that way, is about the same. Right? You're also going to see rapid spread to smaller cities, whether you call them tier two, tier three, whatever word you want to use. But you're going to see movement to smaller, not the major cities, but to some of the smaller cities. It'll take a little time. Ultimately, software engineers want infrastructure, they want a social life, they want clubs, you want what you get in the big cities. And some of the small cities are coming up and doing that and attracting them. So you're going to see that happen. In fact, I was in Kashmir about a week ago for 10 days on a holiday. Very impressed by just the whole place. And I've been there quite often. So in my mind, I can compare what I saw this time with what was there earlier. And I'm seriously thinking of talking to some companies I know to see if they can set up a 100-person kind of center in Srinagar or one of those cities. And, start giving jobs to people who are there. Because you have a lot of educated youth there who speak English, seem to be fairly smart, but don't seem to have jobs that they can go to every day. They work. Tourism is for a few months in the year, so there's lots of opportunities. I think the industry is going to spread out. It's going to become more domain focused and more specialized, if I use that, whatever word you want to use, and it's going to grow. So I'm not worried about
All right, so thank you for answering these questions. Some great experiences you have shared and some amazing insights that we have for our audiences there. Now we are moving on to the next round of this discussion. It's going to be a rapid fire. So, who is your favorite author?
it. The book I like the best, and from that then the author would come out, is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I don't know if you read it. It's a small book, but to me it made a major impact. So I would say Jonathan Livingston Seagull is the book and the author of that book. I haven't read very much more by the same author, but to me that's if it stands out as the one book that I would read again and again.
Any favorite quote that you have that keeps you going?
Yes, I was an avid trekker when I was younger. Gave that up once I started working, but Eric Shipton, he lost his life the third time he tried to climb Everest, and in those days, in the 30s, you did it without oxygen and stuff. He was asked, "Why do you want to climb Everest?" And his answer was, "Because it's there." To me, that's something that keeps me going. Because when people say, "Why do you want to do something? Why do you want to solve a problem?" Because it's there. You want to solve it. And so to me, that particular it's been my motivation for a long time, from the time I was a student, and I used to be fond of mountaineering and hiking.
That's beautiful. And what's your favorite food? What do you like to eat, indulge in? What sort of food?
Yeah, I love food. I love all kinds of food. But when you say what's your comfort food or your favorite food, I go back to halukka paratha.
That's my favorite too. And what's your hobby now and maybe going back to your college days? Did you pursue any of your hobbies?
I have a lot of hobbies, and I'm hoping when I retire sometime, I'll have time to pursue them. So, stamp collecting stamps is a big hobby, and in fact, I have my grandfather's collection that he handed down, and I haven't had, in all fairness, haven't had the time to really put too much effort into it. I used to do a lot more when I was younger, but yes, that's a big hobby. I do collect coins. I do collect old pre-World War II model cars, you know, die-cast model cars. And I do love listening to music. So, lots of hobbies.
That's
And,
amazing.
and reading. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I do collect stamps, I do collect postcards of different countries, I do collect coins as well. So it's really amazing to know that you have similar interests. And now we would like to end up this whole discussion. We have got to know a little bit of you, learned about your experiences. Now we want an expert tip from you, Arjun sir, about how are the ways in which younger generations, whom we call millennials or Gen Z, invest in the issues they care about.
Yeah. So I would say the important thing for most people, and not just the younger generation, even the others, you got to walk the talk. It's a lot of people tell you what to do, but they don't really walk the talk, so to say. They don't, they give you a lot of advice, but they don't follow that same advice or the same path. So I think important thing is, you if you believe in something, you're convinced about something, then do something about it. So, walk the talk. Don't just talk about it. Number one. Number two, gone are the days where it's unlikely that as an individual you'll be able to make that impact, to make a difference. So try and find a way of collaborating with others to try and achieve whatever objective, whatever you want to achieve. I think to me, those are the two important things that I've, I've found in my life that have worked for me, and I think they'll work for people even today.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. It was wonderful having you in this discussion. I'm gonna uh, hear it in loop because there are so many things which inspired me today, and I hope it inspires everybody who watches this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to